This okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. All right, we are live.
All right, perfect. Calls meeting to order. We'll start off with the public comment. Public comment will be taken on items at this time that is taken up by the committee to make a public comment. You can do so 4 ways. I have to go through all this process.
No public comment at this time.
All right. Well, no public comment. Can we start off with a pledge of allegiance? Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
All right, directors, when I call your name, please indicate your presence. Director Bulhan.
Here.
Frost. Here. Gallardo. Director Gallardo. I think she may be having some technical issues.
Yes.
Oh, there we go. Present. Gore.
Here.
Harris.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
New.
Here.
West.
Here.
Vice Chair Clark-Kretz.
Here.
Vice Chair Baines.
Present.
And Chair Saragosa. Absent. We do have a quorum.
All right. Public communication. Any persons wishing to address the committee on any item not on the agenda may do so at this time. Is there any public comment?
There is no public comment.
Thank you. Moving on to the consent calendar. Looking for a motion to from the floor to accept the consent calendar.
New moves for approval.
Gallardo seconds.
There was 3. So did you get those, Robert?
Yeah, I have New with the motion, and then I had Gallardo with the second.
Roll call vote, please.
Roll call here. Director, when I call your name, please indicate your vote. Director Bulhan.
Yes.
Frost. Gallardo.
Yes.
Gore.
Yes.
Harris.
Yes.
Kennedy.
Aye.
New.
Aye.
West.
Aye.
Vice Chair Clark-Kretz.
Yes.
Vice Chair Baines.
Aye.
And Chair Saragosa. Absent. Motion carries.
Thank you. Item number 3, Green Means Go funding and the guidelines. We have a presentation by Garrett.
Great, thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members of the committee. So the item before you, it's an action item, is for the Green Means Go funding program guidelines. So before we jump in on the guidelines and the detail, I want to take a step back and remind ourselves what we mean first by Green Means Go, and then second, what do we mean by program guidelines? So the Green Means Go funding round is SACOG's newest funding program. Thanks to the collective effort of the whole region, there's this one-time state funding coming into the region, which the board has already directed towards Green Means Go. And the purpose of this funding is to accelerate infill housing and help get more housing that addresses housing unaffordability. So that's the Green Means Go funding program, that $34 million that will be awarded through this program to projects throughout the whole SACOG region. So that's the funding program. And then by guidelines really gives the more detail about the program, things like eligibility, things like criteria, and how projects will be evaluated. So we've been working very hard this whole calendar year in standing up those guidelines. You as a committee heard the draft program guidelines last month in May, and we sent those out to a broad range of stakeholders for comments. Comments were due at the end of the month, and we turned around these revised set of guidelines. So we really want to thank everyone that participated in that process. So again, the draft guidelines were the culmination of a lot of work, and then even more work from the cities and counties and the business development community and community-based organizations in reviewing those guidelines and giving some very detailed comments. So we thank everyone for their time. The attachment C, we know there's plenty of attachments to this item. So the attachment C gives a sort of step-by-step summary of every comment we received and then how staff responded to it in the guidelines. So again, we appreciate everyone that's been involved in the Green Means Go process to date. And so really the comments we received were pretty wide ranging. I think a couple of the key themes we call out in the staff report, one maybe bucket of comments is to make sure that the program guidelines call attention to an objective of Green Means Go is about housing affordability. So infill housing, yes, but it's infill housing that helps address affordability. And so we made, and that also, I should say, aligns with the objectives that are coming at us from the state, these underlying funds for the state program. And then the second would be to be thinking about the section we did on community engagement and how that translates to some great input from our community-based organizations working group. Two of the larger themes, and then there were also many individual comments on eligibility and criteria and other general aspects of the guidelines. And so, the purpose of the revisions was to think very critically about the comments we received and how they align with the objective of Green Means Go. And generally, we found most of the comments very much aligned, and like we said, we got those into the revised version. Attachment B, so one of those many attachments I mentioned, attachment B is it gives sort of that track change version of line by line where we made changes. We didn't track change, typos or things like that. We tried track change substantive changes, so you as a committee could see how we've incorporated the feedback. So some of the areas we updated based on the comments. The objectives of Green Means Go, I talked about it earlier, to call attention to housing affordability. The weighting criteria, which is a really important part of the guidelines, how projects will be evaluated, we also updated. And then most of the comments focused on then what's the detail behind those criteria, the 5 criteria in the evaluation. And so we reworked a lot of those sections to try to give some more of that detail. But we also talked about the process, which is what will follow this is actually the application and the evaluation guidance, which kind of lines up the objectives that are talked about in these guidelines with the more detailed sort of metrics and evaluation criteria. So again, the attachment A is the new guidelines. Attachment B shows all the changes we made. And attachment C is the sort of point by point comments received and how we responded. So we feel good about again, the process we went through, and we really appreciate a lot of people put a lot of time into this. One thing we did want to flag, which we talked about in the staff report as well, is we are still waiting on state approval. So once these guidelines are adopted, if you so choose to recommend, if the board so chooses to adopt, we do need to get approval from the state agencies that are overseeing the whole statewide effort. Green Means Go is our Sacramento region's effort, but it nests within a larger state effort. And we have actually yet to receive approval on our concepts that we've sent towards the state a few months ago. If the committee may recall, it was an item that was before you earlier in this year. And so there is some risk. We're very excited about being out in front. We're one of the first in the state to be out in front. And like we said, we think there's huge value of Green Means Go moving forward, but we did just want to highlight that risk of a potential, if we don't get that approved from the state, that could affect the timeline that we've laid out in the guidelines. As of course is not the hope, and we're coordinating very closely with the state partners, but we wanted to make sure that we're communicating that risk to you as the committee and also in the conversations we're having with cities and counties and stakeholders. So we're tracking it. We feel good about where we're at, but it's something we wanted to raise. So again, this is the revised version of the material you saw last month on the guidelines. It's a very important step we'll take. If the board were to adopt these, we would then transition to actually building up the applications themselves for applications later in the summer and into the fall. So happy to answer any questions on the revisions we made since you saw this last, or some clarifying questions or reminders of what Green Means Go is all about.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions at this time? Any board members online? Or?
Seeing no questions online and no one with their hand raised.
Okay, perfect.
Just make a comment, I guess.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you very much. I had a chance to read through yeah, it is. Hopefully you can hear me. I had a chance to read through the strike through version, which was very helpful. Appreciate it. And I think you all talked about this at our last committee meeting, right? So I didn't have a chance to take a look at it, but I really appreciate the effort to incorporate all the feedback and the input. I think it's cleaner, and I just think you guys did a very good job. And it's sort of nice to be first out of the gate, and we'll just wait and see, right, if the state says go ahead or not. And I mean, if anybody's going to be ready, it'll be us, since it was our idea in the first place. So let's hope that they'll move forward and maybe even use what we've done as a template for other organizations or areas.
Director Gore, can I just put a finer point on that?
Yeah.
So I know Garrett said this, and we talked a little bit about this as staff, but the good news is you say we're first out of the gate. In fact, we sort of, in many ways, we inspired a statewide program, right, with Green Means Go. There is a chance and a risk the state could have guidelines that are somewhat incompatible. So I just want to have everybody understand that. We still think that you should adopt these and advance them so we are ready. And we are working with the state and HCD to make sure, hopefully that we're not just sitting back, we're trying to engage with them. But there is that risk that there may be some incompatibility, but we think we should be out there. We think we should go true to the name of the program. So just want to make sure people understand that.
All right. Thank you, Director Gore. Thank you for your comments. And thank you for that clarification. At this time, what's the pleasure of the board? Oh, sorry, is there any public comment?
There is no public comment for this item.
All right, now, what's the pleasure of the board?
Yes, this is an
Yes.
item.
All right, then I'll go ahead and move the item for approval.
Clark, second.
So it's been moved and seconded. If we have a roll call vote, please.
All right, Director Bullahan,
Yes.
Frost, Gallardo. Director Gallardo? you
Yes.
can- Oh, perfect. Gore.
Yes.
Thank you, Director Gallardo. Harris,
Yes.
Kennedy,
Aye.
New,
Aye.
West.
Yes.
Thank you, Director West. Vice Chair Clark Kretz,
Yes.
Vice Chair Baines,
Aye.
Chair Saragosa, absent, motion carries.
Okay, moving on to information items. We have, item number 4 with Gregory Chu. Long time no see.
Yes, long time no see. Director Carms, we were racing down, Director Carms and I were in a meeting in Yuba City just now, and we're racing down. But what I didn't realize is you were here in the morning in Sacramento, went back up to Yuba City for our meeting, and then came back down for this meeting. Thank you for your dedication to the organization. So what I'm here for today is to just give some information about efforts that our local jurisdictions have been successful in doing in receiving grant funds. During the pandemic, one of the things that we've heard a lot about in the housing crisis is that there's a lot of challenges to building housing, and particularly affordable housing. The state has opened up more grant funds for housing, and some of them are non-competitive, such as our REAP program. But many of the funding programs out there are competitive on a statewide basis. So it's city and county jurisdictions competing against all other cities and counties in the state. So what we want to do today was to give 2 examples of successful jurisdictions in our region, and they're successful for different reasons. First, we're going to have Yuba City talk about, they received a $30 million grant for their Richland Village property in Yuba City. So we're very fortunate to have 2 speakers from them, and I'll introduce you in a second. And then second, we'll have Placer County staff, housing staff, talk about, they also received a $16 million grant through the Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities Program, but they also are very successful in several other aspects of housing, and are a good example of the pro-housing designation application that all jurisdictions in the state can apply for on a non-competitive basis. So with that, I'm going to introduce Yuba City. We have 2 speakers. First, Ben Moody. He's the Public Works and Development Services Director. He's been with the agency for the last 15 years. He's got 20 years of experience with local governments, including he currently serves as a city surveyor, city engineer, and he manages 8 divisions: engineering, street maintenance, water treatment and distribution, wastewater collections and treatment, fleet maintenance, housing, planning, and building. He's a graduate of Cal State Chico. He's vice president of the Britton Elementary School District Board of Trustees and Sutter Lions Club, Sutter Youth Organization, and proud Mandarin farmer. That's something I've known him for a long time. I did not know that last part about being a Mandarin farmer. In addition, from the Regional Housing Authority, the Executive Director, Gustavo Becerra, is also going to speak, and he's been with the agency for the last 26 years, overseeing 6 departments with a housing portfolio of over 1,200 residential units and over 200 currently under construction, and a housing voucher assistance program of approximately 2,000 units. His areas of operation are Sutter, Yuba, Colusa, and Nevada counties, and the cities within that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ben Moody from the city of Yuba City, and he will present virtually.
Thank you, Greg. Good afternoon, everyone. Definitely Chairman Baines, Mr. Chu, it's nice seeing familiar faces. You know, you guys made good time from an hour ago. And so, you know, basically, this is really a partnership, is why I'm on here with Mr. Gustavo. Gus is really the project lead for this, but it was really came to fruition with the partnership and early coordination and really understanding the needs and complexities with his team and the city partnering with them to work through that. And so I'm going to flip it over to Gus, and please, with the specifics regarding the 176 unit on 4.9 acres and really the how we coordinated together to really make hit the fine points of the grant to put it in a position that would score and bring money regionally, because I know I've over the years in coordination with the Regional Housing Authority's team, it's a struggle to try to pull local dollars up to the Yuba City area from some of the big players in big metropolitan areas. And so, Gus, if you want to go into the particulars, and then I could definitely give the city's point of view, you know, is what helped make it a project or where we partnered with it for the specifics.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ben. Director Baines, members of the board, good to see you today, albeit virtually. Ben is right. I mean, this took collaboration with many partners, you know, not just the city of Yuba City, although the city of Yuba City, obviously with the property being in their jurisdiction, was a key partner. But I would be remiss without mentioning our other partners, and that's the county of Sutter, as well as the school district. And of course, our transit partners. Now, you may wonder, why the school district? Why the county? Well, the city committed $1 million to this project. The county committed almost $500,000 to this project. And the school district committed about $250,000 in just like the county, in deferred impact fees. And so when we layered this local government leverage to apply for affordable housing and sustainable communities funding, it really gave us a really good score, because there's a category, as Mr. Chu was mentioning, how it's all competitive. One of the categories is local government leverage. So when you bring dollars from the city, the county, the school district, and then our agency is also a government agency, as you know, we committed the land to the project. So you layer the value of the land and the commitments from city, county, and the school district, you know, that put us in a really good spot to be competitive with other cities and counties. HSE, as you may know, has notoriously been very high density urban oriented. The majority of those awards do end up in the Bay Area, Sacramento, Los Angeles, San Diego, what have you. So, you know, the fact that colleagues over in Placer County and ourselves, you know, being in Yuba City, the fact that $30 million award came here was you know, was just great news, right? Because if those dollars don't hit these type of more rural communities very often. So Ben is right, it's a 176 unit project, a lot of walkability, a lot of bike friendly features. The half of the property will be 1-bedroom units. And then we have 25% of them as 2 bedrooms, 25% of them as 3 bedrooms. We are up now, this $30 million award, as you may know, is not does not fully finance the project, right? In addition to the city, county, and school district leverage and the $30 million AHSC award, we still have to apply for other financing. So we're applying for what's called low-income housing tax credit financing. I'm sure many of you are familiar with that sort of financing. We do have an application in to the state at this moment. We should hear looking at my calendar, mid-June. So in about 2 weeks, official awards are announced. If we are not successful, they have another round of financing in July. And so we would be applying again in July, and then those awards will be announced in October. So we still have our fingers crossed on how we're going to look in June. In looking at other projects, we're kind of on the cusp right there of either we're in or we're out. So we're going to be either last one in or first one out, so to speak. So, but fingers crossed. If not, there's other opportunities for sure in the next round. This is a net zero project, completely electric, 100% electric. That was another reason why we scored much higher in the application round is by eliminating any sort of gas at the property. That gave us another edge with other fellow applicants. Timing of the project, if we are successful in receiving tax credits in this round, then we would close our financing in December and, weather permitting, start construction soon thereafter. If we get pushed to the next round in July with awards in October, then we would be closing our financing in March of 2023 and starting construction immediately thereafter as well. So, happy to answer any questions from anyone, and welcome them. Unless there's anything you want to add, Ben, of course.
Yeah, I would just say with the city's perspective, it was just instrumental with the partnerships again beforehand, and then working through what the critical paths were and the timing, and then having realistic expectations for both partners. And I think really the relationships between the council and Gus's board, and then with between us, it really was key to streamlining the entitlements, to coming up with an affordable design that could then be built that matches the available grant funds. A lot of those things that might seem small, but that really are critical path early on with the application and the dollar amount, I think, were key to leading to the success.
Yeah, well said, Ben. So again, just happy to answer any other comments or questions from the board.
Does anyone have any questions at this time?
Click on the shared screen for those who are virtual. That's an elevation element that we have here as part of our entitlements package. You can see obviously the roof just wallpapered pretty much edge to edge with solar photovoltaic. And Ben is right? That balance of having a good design, a good quality design, and trying to keep costs down, right? That's a big challenge nowadays. So, nothing, no big frills, in the design. It is a pretty, basic design, and that's done on purpose, right? Especially in this day and age with construction costs just being exponentially just so much higher than they were a couple months ago. So, it's a good design, but yet we were trying to maintain some sort of affordability in construction. The three-story buildings you saw scroll by were the residential buildings. The single story that you see now, there we go. That's the community center. So it does include a community center with a tot lot for the kids, open space, community laundry room, of course, also 100% electric, net zero. It doesn't really reflect, but there will definitely be a lot of open space for the residents. The design purposely kind of has a courtyard in the middle so that families can watch kids, say through their exterior balconies, or if parents are doing laundry or doing any kind of business in the community center. There's a nice flow, I guess, to the design where kids could be watched while parents are needing to do or just socialize. But yeah, we're pretty happy with the design and how it came out.
Vice Chair Baines, we do have two questions out there for the directors. Vice Chair Clark-Kretz and then Director Gallardo have their hands up.
Thank you. And thank you for a great presentation. That's a huge win. I'm very excited to hear about that. You talked about the 25% single room and then double. How did you mix all of them together in your project? Did you, how did you?
So actually it's 50%. So there's 88 one bedrooms, and then there's 44 two bedrooms and 44 threes. So they're pretty dispersed throughout, pretty evenly dispersed. And the reason we came up with those numbers is just market data, right? We pulled a market study, a third-party market study. We look at wait list data of various housing needs and programs. And the market study told us that there's, that should be the balance that we need to have in Yuba City. And so that's how we came up with those numbers.
Yeah, no, that's great. And then in terms of where they're located on the project, I assume that they are just spread out.
Correct. That is correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's
Kind
cool.
of an even spread. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. Good job. Thank you for your presentation.
Oh, my pleasure.
Director Gallo?
Thank you. One of the things you talked about, the different contribution between the school district, and I think it was a fee deferrals from the county and the school district.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Was there any conversation or opportunity from your water district or your sewer district to have that same fee deferrals?
Our water and sewer is through the city of Yuba City, so there's no special districts for that. But yeah, the city was committed $1 million, so not through impact fees, but that was actually from an affordable housing fund that the city of Yuba City has.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, if I could add to that, the utilities are even another animal because they're enterprise fund and by law, they're supposed to be, it's a little bit harder on how you handle fees with the utilities. But the city does have an option regarding financing of those fees over time. And so, which may play based on cash flow and how that works, where we're trying to incentivize some of these projects.
And that's a good clarification, Ben, for Director Gallo. So I'll add that. So the county deferral and the school district's deferral is an actual loan, right? They didn't waive the fees. They didn't grant the fees. They didn't go away. It's a long-term, so 55-year, like a traditional loan, secured by the property through a deed of trust and a promissory note and a loan agreement. The terms are 55 years with a 3% simple interest. It's not a compounded, it's a simple interest. And payments are based on residual cash flow of the property. At the end of the 55 years, any unpaid principal and accrued interest is due and payable. And so both the school district and the county will book that receivable loan as you would any other loan. So in essence, they're both lenders to the project, but it is a secured loan. It's not and that was exactly why to what Mr. Moody alluded to was they didn't want to defer them, they didn't want to grant them, but in order to help us pencil the deal, it's what's called a soft loan. That's how it was structured.
All right, so they're getting still all their school impact fees. You guys are getting all your same fees. You just are spreading it out over time that they're paying.
Correct.
There really wasn't any deferral. I guess there was.
Yeah, essentially it's a long-term deferral, and payments over a long period of time. They do accrue interest, but it's just those creative ways of how to finance affordable housing, nowadays that have led us to work with these partners in these a little more creative ways.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Are there any other questions at this time? Director Frost?
I just have a question. So does the jurisdiction is the jurisdiction required to have an on-site manager over a period of time for these projects?
Yeah, state law requires it. In fact, a project of this size, I think it triggers a second level we're going to have two on-site managers, two full-time on-site managers. But yeah, I think state law states any property with more than, used to be 20, but they actually reduced the threshold. I want to say 15 or 16 units on a property requires an on-site, some sort of on-site presence, whether it be a maintenance technician or just a traditional property on-site manager. But because of 176 units, we're actually going to have 2 on-site.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Moody and Mr. Becerra, for your presentations. Congratulations on your success in receiving that grant. We'll go back to Mr. Chu.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Yuba City staff. I know that they have other meetings to go to right now. So right now I'm going to introduce the Placer County staff. We have 2 speakers. Anne Marie Novotny is a housing specialist with Placer County Community Development Resource Agency. She's currently working on an implementation of the county's general plan housing element for 2021 to 29, the 8-year planning period. She oversees various affordable housing programs and initiatives for developing affordable housing in unincorporated Placer County. Her professional career is over 20 years of experience in various planning positions, 14 with Outer County, 3 years here with SACOG, and 3 years with Sacramento Regional Transit. She's also got 10 years of grant writing experience, including starting when she was here at SACOG. Anne Marie holds a bachelor's degree in business administration from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee and a certificate in land use and environmental planning from the University of California, Davis continuing education program. With her is Devin McNally. He's an associate planner, also with Placer County's Development Resource Agency. Currently works on developing housing policy for the county, administering the county's various federal and state grant programs, and providing site analysis for development of housing. Devin holds a master's degree in community planning from the University of Maryland School of Architecture, Planning and Preservation. And previously he worked for the American Red Cross and the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development. So with that, Anne Marie Novotny to start.
Thanks, Greg, and thanks for inviting us to come here and give this presentation. So first, I'm going to talk a little bit about how Placer County has been successful in competing for statewide housing grant funds. So one of our keys to success is we stay on top of the state housing and community development departments notice of funding availabilities, or otherwise known as NOFAs. And we pay close attention to the different program guidelines, particularly eligibility for applicants and projects, and well as the scoring criteria. And another thing that they actually have an online calendar that we keep tabs on, and that's sort of a sample there. And on that calendar, there are links to the different programs. So we familiarize ourselves with all the different programs that we could potentially go after for funding for housing. One of the keys is to try to leverage bonus points as much as possible, and also to establish really good working relationships with HCD staff. And it's really important to follow up with the reviewing staff when applications have been turned in and are being processed by HCD. Another key tip that Devin has had is that start saving any electronic documents that you can, resolutions, ordinances, drafts in one location, so it's easy to make referencing easy. And then also we make sure that we coordinate with other departments to what we call stacking resources. And actually Placer County has a countywide multidisciplinary housing unit team that coordinates together. And so that's how we kind of keep our resources, we share resources with these different funding programs. So we have quite a few active grants right now that we have received from the state, from different funding programs. This is just a sample of a few of them. So we have a $500,000 grant from the HCD Home Program, and this is being used to fund our first-time homebuyer assistance program, $250,000 of that, and then also some of the funds were already used for rental assistance of $250,000. We also have a $500,000 LEAP grant through AB 101, and that's for a sewer study and planning document. REAP, we got $388,000, And that's being divvied up among different projects. Some of the funding went to our housing element update. Also, we're working on our Auburn Bowman Community Plan update. And then we also received some over 1 million from the PLHA funding cycle. This is just for, I think, year 2+. And so that's being used for different phases. In this case, it's being used for some of an environmental review for our project, the Dollar Creek Crossing project. And then we also received some funding from SB2, and that funding has been divvied up among different projects. And then we also have a 2020 CDBG funding program that is being used to fund our feasibility and housing market studies for actual campus project. And then we also have, and it didn't fit on the page here, but this was a very large grant that we received from the Home Key 2.0 program. Over $23 million was awarded to the county, and that is being used for a hotel in Roseville that is going to have 80 units for transitional housing. And then we also received a 1.7 million grant that will be used up in the Tahoe area. It's called the Brown Bear. I think it's gonna be 14 units, right? For also for transitional housing. So that's just a sampling of what we currently have in our hopper right now. And we'll go to the next slide. And then we currently have some applications in. We submitted back in November of last year an application for a pro housing designation program. And this is a program that creates incentives. Basically, it's additional points or other preference and scoring of applications for competitive housing and infrastructure programs for other programs. And we're still waiting to hear back from the state on that, but we've been getting some good feedback that we think that's going to be going through sometime, hopefully later this year. We also are going to be putting in another application for the Community Development Block Grant Program, and that's due later this month. And that's for funding for our first-time homebuyer assistance program, as well as some environmental review for our Placer County Government Center program and a home hardening program. And then we're also been active with SACOG. We had a meeting not that long ago to discuss some ideas that we had for the Green Means Go program that you talked about earlier. And those called for projects are coming out in July, and I believe it'll be due in October. So those are the things that we have going on at this point. And then what I'd like to do is turn it over to Devin, because he's going to talk about the pro housing designation program and how to be successful in getting that awarded. So I'll turn over to Devin right now.
Thanks, Ann. So as part of this, one of the things that we look at when we're doing these bonuses is a big one that the state is pushing is obviously the pro housing program. It's a new program that HCD has launched. And not only does it apply to housing funding, but also transportation funding as well. In fact, we've been talking with DPW because actually they would get bonus points on their application for Caltrans funding if we got this designation. So there are 4 categories under this. The first one is favorable zoning and land use. There's the acceleration of housing production, reducing development costs, and then providing financial subsidies. And what you'll see is actually when they kind of present it, it seems a little bit daunting. And actually there's a lot that most jurisdictions are already doing that would earn them a lot of points towards this. Another quick thing I'll note though, however, that really helps is that they offer enhancement points. So what you see there is what we came up with our application. So we had a number of policies, but we made the 30-point maximum. We just came over it. And a big part of that was because we were doing things to enhance the number of points you would normally get. So that's having a consolidated housing strategy that you're working towards, that's providing, additional funds. And so looking at that portion can actually help you get over the line in a pretty significant way. So I'll kind of go through some of the kind of things that we're working on that I think other jurisdictions in the area are also kind of working towards. So this is actually a big part of our enhancements came from a housing strategy and development plan we put together in 2019. And so we had a number of zoning code amendments that are going forward, hopefully for adoption soon. And so as part of that, we were able to put those into different slots under the first kind of category 1, which is zoning amendments kind of addressing housing. I would encourage everyone to be creative. This is a new program. There is a give and take with HCD staff. They often will ask questions, we respond to them, kind of walk them through our own zoning ordinance, and they're willing to kind of sit down and talk. But this was a few of those that we looked at. In the second category, objective standards was a big one. This is something that a lot of jurisdictions are moving towards anyways. There are a number of projects that are already in the pipeline. So we had our design manual for multifamily and mixed use housing. And so we, kind of put that forward as our objective standards tool. Under category 3, a big portion of it is innovative housing. We are proposing some things related to tiny homes, but ADUs are a big part of this. And a lot of people have had free ADU programs. They've had pre-approved plans, a specialist, even a website. So all of this work that you're already doing can count towards that application. And then finally, kind of looking at inclusionary housing and funding. This is our inclusionary housing ordinance. So it's the fee program that goes into our housing trust fund. That is something, a very important part of this. With every one of these policies that you're putting forward or programs, you need to provide documentation to HCD staff. So in the case of this, it's important to have your housing trust guidelines updated and kind of to date. So if you haven't touched them since like 2011, 2012, when the success or redevelopment went away, now's the time to maybe update them. But then also any kind of work that you guys have been doing. So if it's a resolution that, you put, for example, in Yuba City, where the city put forward funding, that would be something that would be allowed under this. It's demonstrating, showing your work. That's important. So that's kind of the little basics of it. One of the things we've learned is follow up with the reviewers. They will likely be it's the same team, I believe, that's reviewing housing elements or, is working on policy. So they've got a lot on their plate. So feel free to follow up with them. Hey, proactively ask them any questions. Some of the staff are very familiar with zoning ordinances. Some are less familiar with zoning ordinances. So they'll often ask you for kind of clarifying questions. One of the big things is that getting in early also helps because then you can be part of those discussions. And so we've been pretty proactive in kind of having those conversations. We're hopeful that we're going to be designated soon, fingers crossed. I know that we've got all the goals out of the way. There's a few kind of final questions that we're just wrapping up now, but we're hoping to get designated. I know the city of Sacramento was the first that was designated, so we're hoping to follow in their footsteps. So happy to answer any questions. I know I kind of blew through that really quick.
Do the directors have questions for Devin or Anna Marie at this time?
I have a question. I'm curious because over time, I guess I've lived a lot of years because I remember when I was young, really young, they had a living room and 3 small bedrooms in the house, really small. And then they came to a time, I can't remember when it was, it might've been in the 70s or 80s or 90s when they started to have larger bedrooms. And then they got to that point where they had 2 master bedrooms and a bathroom. And I wonder if you're taking those kind of things into account when you're designing these attainable or affordable or, high density projects that might accommodate more different types of situations. Because it seems like we're running into that, at least I am, when I'm dealing with homeless or people that are going homeless that are just trying to figure out how they're going to survive. They're even calling friends to say, do you want to try and get an apartment together? That might be how we can make it work, Are you taking those kind of things into your design into account when you're designing these things?
So one of the county's strategic policies is pushing a variety of housing types. So recognizing that there are different housing types that fit different situations, both families and individuals. And so one of the reasons, with the zoning code amendments is to kind of allow for that. So not necessarily pushing ourselves into one type of housing. And actually that was really helpful in the pro-housing application is we could demonstrate there are different types of housing that are allowable. So that fit different, a multi-generational family to a one-person household.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Anybody online?
I'm seeing no hands up online.
Okay, so
Thank
now if I may.
Go ahead.
So I just wanted to say thank you to our staff in Placer County. They work really hard, as all of our staffs do, but I just appreciate that, I think the challenging thing is there's so many different pots of money and so many different ways that we can try to actually cobble together dollars to do different projects. And so I think probably what's so important is having staff who can keep their eye on doing this and doing the hard work. So I really appreciate you coming today to share. Thanks.
Yeah, this is Michael. I apologize for being late, so thank you for stepping in for me here, Chairman. But I this was something I have brought up to staff, and I really wanted to get those best practices out there. I thought it was important for all of us. I mean, I hate to reinvent the wheel when there's some really great work that's being done out there, and to the extent that we can share this knowledge across our jurisdictions, I think it's just a great idea. And I know, Clint and we talked about this, and maybe we do this again, because I just think it's great for the group. I certainly missed this part of it because I unfortunately was behind, but I just think this is a great way for us to share ideas too. So again, thank you to Placer for coming out on this as well.
Yes, thank you for sharing, and congratulations on your success as well.
Oh, thanks.
So I'll turn this over to Chairman Zaragoza.
Actually, keep on going. You're doing great. So I stepped in late here. I'm happy to be part of the pack. So go for it.
Alrighty. Moving on to item number 5. If we could have Renee, please come forward for your presentation.
All right, good afternoon. Renee DeVier-Oki and your staff. I'm actually going to be co-presenting with 2 virtual guests today from Valley Vision, Grace Kaufman and Trish Kelly. Grace, do you want to go ahead and share the PowerPoint?
Yes.
And so while she gets that up, so it's been a few months since we kind of checked in on this project. A little by way of background, I wanted to start off with what is CROP? So this is what we call our Coordinated Rural Opportunity Plan. We received funding late 2020 as part of the Department of Conservation Strategic Agricultural Land Conservation Program, and it was part of the planning portion of that program. And the question that we're trying to answer with CROP is really, what are the infrastructure needs and assets, both from a regional lens and county lens, to help keep our lands in production and preserved? So our 6-county area is very unique compared with other areas in California. And we heard a little bit about this from Glenda Humiston back in August when she came to present. So one of the things that makes this so unique is that 80% of our plan area is actually designated for ag, open space, and timber uses. So this is kind of the complement to the presentation that you heard earlier that was focused a little bit more on infill development. So CROP as a project aims to elevate local conservation, economic development, and planning efforts by uniting them in a cohesive regional strategy. Really, the intention of which is to help you and our other partners compete for grants and secure available funding, both to preserve, support, and expand critical agricultural infrastructure and services. What we want is a plan that can identify both a regional story as well as highlight individual county needs in a similar manner. And our intent is really to build upon the efforts of the Prosperity Partnership, our early SACOG Rural Urban Connection Strategy work, RUCS, and Valley Vision's work in the food and ag space. So we're going to be taking a three-prong approach to the project, which Grace is going to go over on the next slide. So inventory, existing work, overall assessment of where we are now, and the development of a framework for future coordination and investments. And so just a little bit on RUCs, because that's always something that you're probably familiar with. It's our program that's been in place for 10 years. And much of our early work focused on economic viability and how fundamentally derived from land use decision, investment, and supportive infrastructure can help in preservation of ecosystem services. A lot of you participate in some of our early work, even the tours. I'm thinking back to when we went up to the forest up there. And so CROP is kind of the next iteration of our work, kind of aligning all these different efforts. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Grace, who will walk us through kind of a timeline on the project.
Thank you, Renee, and hello, everyone. I'm Grace Kaufman, I'm project manager at Valley Vision, and happy to be here. So Renee mentioned the CROP approach, and that's kind of a three-pronged approach that we're using for this project. The first is an inventory of county and regional plans. So we're cataloging RUCs-related research, including reports, assessment plans, economic development plans, general plans, sustainable groundwater management plans, integrated regional water management plans, crop and livestock reports, documents like that that will help inform our final plan. We're also doing a general assessment. So that's like the phase that we're in right now. We're conducting research and creating a space for county level stakeholders to talk about some of the challenges and barriers as it relates to sustaining and preserving ag land and what maybe isn't working as well as intended or that could be more effective. So some of the folks that we have in those meetings are resource conservation districts, land trusts, economic development departments, county supervisors, water districts and agencies, UCANR, the co-op extension. We have some farmers, growers associations, and farm bureaus. It really just depends on the county. And we have had meetings with Yolo, El Dorado, and Yuba so far, and we have meetings with Placer, Sacramento, and Sutter County scheduled for next week. So if you'd like to join that, or if someone from your staff or team would like to attend, please email me and I will put my email in the chat for you all as well. And so then in these meetings, we're really using a framework for coordination and investment that will mirror a larger regional report as well. So each of the county profiles and the regional profile will match 5 categories that Trish will dive into deeper later. And I'd also like to note that this plan really, as the last sentence says, will serve as a resource for promoting investment in this sector that'll strengthen our region's ag economy and prosperity. And with that, I will go to Trish. Oh, wait, sorry. Let me talk about the timeline first. My bad. So the timeline of this project, we started in the summer of last year, gathering the regional stakeholders. Since then, we've been doing research on some of those reports, as I mentioned before, and we're gathering with the county level stakeholders right now in those meetings of around 10 to 15 people. And then in the fall, we'll be reporting back to those county and regional leaders with some of the research that we've done and what we've heard from them to see if these solutions and challenges that we've identified match what they've experienced. And then this project will conclude in the winter of 2023, and that will be our final profiles for the county and the region. And now I will go to Trish.
Thank you so much, Grace. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Trish Kelly, Managing Director at Valley Vision, and it's really a pleasure to be back meeting with the committee. There were many months that I spent earlier working on the original RUCs Food Hub study project, and so I had the chance to work with the board and just working with board and staff over the years. We have a very strong partnership between Valley Vision and SACOG, and we're very appreciative of this grant because, as Renee and Grace both mentioned, it's to really strengthen the rural and agricultural assets in our economy. And as RUCs, just the foundation of that is the interdependence between our regional, within our regional context of our rural, urban, and suburban areas, and so much of our land use being in these kind of assets, it's really critical for us. Also because, as Renee mentioned, our regional prosperity strategy, that's a partnership with SACOG and a lot of our other regional leadership organizations. Food and agriculture is one of our competitive advantage clusters. So this aspect of preserving and strengthening the rural assets in our ag lands is really foundational to the strength and competitiveness of the cluster. So we're really, in our other work, looking to build opportunities to look at business and economic development aspects and strengthen the resiliency and the sustainability of the ag sector. So parallel to that, last fall, we did a food system action plan through the support of the Sacramento Region Community Foundation. We're able to weave in a lot of the aspects that we're looking at through this project on the viability of agriculture and support for the food economy. So there's a lot of intersections, and this project is really giving us very sound information that will hopefully lead to opportunities for investment. There's a lot of new funding coming in from that is an opportunity for the region coming from the state and federal agencies. So we have connections and partnerships with them. And so the issues that are identified here and the opportunities and needs, we have an opportunity to match up for those investment opportunities. So as was mentioned under this inventory of county and regional plans, as we've been doing the outreach with stakeholders and having our convening meetings, we're getting very timely, up-to-date input on current plans too, because we did a lot of the aggregation of this information last year. So it's a very real-time kind of aspect. And as Grace mentioned, it captures a lot of different kind of data points that relate to rural economies. And the example that just came up yesterday, Grace, if you could go back to that slide, was a plan that El Dorado County is working on. So we really wanted to get a better understanding of the water issues. They're different in each county. There's shared assets and issues, but there's also things that are unique or special to each area. So going deeper on some of the information and the plans that the local communities are working on is being integrated into this process. Next slide, please, Grace. So right now, as Grace mentioned, we're in this outreach and consultation process with the stakeholders and community partners in each of the 6 counties, and we've done 3, and we're got the next 3 meetings scheduled over the next few weeks. So this is an example of the process that we're using. It's called Mentimeter, where it's kind of like, because we're doing Zoom calls, it's a sort of a virtual way to do flip charts and Post-it notes. So people are able to put a lot of information in a very short amount of time about the kind of issues and barriers that they're facing and things that we want the plan to and the framework to address. So this is one of the 5 areas that we are collecting information on. And so this is just an example of the kind of topics and data points that come up. And then we have a conversation as we go through the process as well. And we do follow-up outreach with people that have been mentioned or other resources that we need to capture. Next slide, please, Grace. And then all of this work that we've been conducting and information that we've been gathering in the outreach, very synergistic and iterative, it will flow into this framework. And these are the 5 areas that we're looking at in our inquiry process. So very important, timely issues of water and flood, land, and including regenerative ag processes, but we're also looking to try to identify the issues related to pressures on land use conversion and land use, and how current general plans and other plans that are in place are ensuring that we continue to not only protect our ag land, but provide the economic opportunity so that ranchers and growers can keep their lands in agricultural production. And then, of course, very important to SACOG's mission, transportation, infrastructure. There's a lot of discussion about the condition of rural roads, getting product to market, being able to bring people into the rural communities, especially for agritourism. And then the nexus with broadband infrastructure. Valley Vision also manages our broadband consortium, and we've been working with a lot of the communities on priority needs. We know it's really critical in our rural communities. We have a lot of gaps. And so that is there are also opportunities for joint use dig once projects with transportation. So looking for those alignment and funding opportunities. There's millions or billions of dollars coming into the state from state and federal funding sources there as well. And then, of course, you can't be in agriculture without dealing with a very intense regulatory environment. So we're trying to identify some of the key critical barriers, but also opportunities where there could be some streamlining or things that we could recommend back for improvements and best practices too. And I think this can relate as local governments to a lot of the work that you might be doing where there's opportunities to get from the best practices and that we'll be able to raise some of those. And then we are probing at both the county and the regional level. So yes.
Trish, I just want to, before you move on,
Oh, yes.
one, I might forget this question or it won't be as top of my mind. So on the ag side, has this taken into account the scoping plan from CARB and some of the changes that are just being that will be coming out in the next couple of weeks that are on their sort of list of items that will affect agriculture? Because certainly I think it's going to be relevant to this discussion. When we're looking at regenerative and whether it's fallowing some land in order to composting. I mean, there's a bunch of things that are coming up. I mean, I'm jazzed that El Dorado County has been so involved in this process. I think it's great. But I'm just wondering how much or if all the scoping plan and some of the regulatory actions that are coming out of Air Resources Board have been kind of melded into this or at least looked at.
I can answer that, Trish, if you'd like.
Go ahead. Renee.
Yeah, so we're definitely looking at that and evaluating the plan that came out. We know there's actions going to be taking place in June. So that's one of the points of plan, kind of that first phase where we're looking through what plans are available and how we can fold them into crop. So one of the things that we want to do with crop is to make sure that we are prepared for, any of the climate budget that comes out so that we can apply for some of those projects that maybe accelerate changeover. So definitely then be included in that. Hopefully that answers your question.
It does. I think that's great. I mean, a lot of this, we don't know exactly what the final composition is going to be, in the scoping plan, but I'm very happy to hear that we're on top of that. And I should have expected that. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Oh, no, it's a great question. And we do have that more full conversation about climate smart ag and the range of resources across all the agencies. There's things like the Energy Commission, there's the new Community Economic Resilience Fund. We're really trying to, as I mentioned, look at the infrastructure needs and opportunities and then what resources might be available, but from the regulatory or policy side, what it's very real time. There's so much happening, sort of need a dynamic approach to this. So thank you for raising that issue.
I appreciate it. I mean, because my concern, and I know you had mentioned it here too, is the small farmers. It's it's one thing, if you're Wawona or somebody really big, it's a lot easier to comply. And the thing that I hate to see is a self-fulfilling prophecy where we locked a lot of the small farmers out, and we only have what people consider agribusiness because small guys just can't compete at that level. So it's a concern of mine, and I know it's a concern of agriculture that something like that doesn't happen.
Yeah, there's so many areas where you can see that, for instance, on the water issues with the water table levels dropping and drilling for wells. Who can afford to drill for wells? How does that affect small farmers? It's really interesting when you look at the kind of context of agriculture. Each county has a different set of the size of the growers, the kind of crops, the market relationships. And so El Dorado County especially is really comprised of a lot of smaller growers, and that's really an asset for the region. So how do we sort of customize those approaches too? Yeah, so thank you for that so much. And we had a great call yesterday with El Dorado County and Yuba County, so they're very on our mind. All the assets. I'll just say as an aside, I know we have time, but we asked people what their favorite memories or places were in each of their counties. And, when you hear that, it's just so inspiring that we have so much in our region that is incredible that we want to support and keep going. So Now we have, just on the side, you can see the examples of some of the kind of input that we're getting that relate to current growth boundaries or general plan alignment, collaboration between cities and counties and across the region. So we really want to focus on that interjurisdictional and cross-boundary collaboration and opportunity. So next slide, please, Grace. Okay, so I'll turn it back to Grace.
Thanks, Trish. So our plan over the next 6 months is to continue outreach and engagement with county level stakeholders and then compile some of those barriers, solutions, and successes that we hear and research in these meetings and with our regional stakeholders as well. And then we're going to develop that that policy priorities and what infrastructure is needed for the county and the region to ensure that the viability of ag is there for the region and that land is conserved. So I think that is the end of our presentation. If folks have any questions, I don't know if we have time for that, but thank you for having us.
Are there any questions from the board at this time? Anybody online?
I'm seeing no hands raised online.
Perfect. I just wanted to thank Renee, Grace, and Trish for great presentation. Want to let you know that I look forward to being involved in your guys' next set of meetings as a fourth generation California farmer. To share some of the concerns we have in Sutter County and throughout Northern California. So
Yes, definitely. I would say if anybody's interested, just reach out and we can make sure you're included in the meetings, or if you have a resource that you'd like to share for us to look at, go ahead and send them our way. Even pictures we're putting together like these county level profiles as well as the regional level profiles. So as much as it can to share your story of agriculture, that would be great.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item 6. Chairman Saragosa has an update regarding the Citizens Initiative.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I wanted to just put this on the agenda just to kind of give a brief update on kind of where we're at. You know, we had a long conversation at our last board meeting on this issue. Probably was, you know, especially for those like myself that, you know, weren't in Sacramento County, kind of an eye opener on how this could potentially affect the 6 region area for a sales tax measure. So just wanted to kind of give an update to everybody. Our Chairman Jennings, has put together a working group. So that's him as chair, myself, and then the 3 committee chairs. So Mike Koslowski on P&I, Director Saylor on transportation, and myself here for Lunar. To try to sit down with the proponents, and this is what we're doing. We're continuing to work with the proponents to try to find a viable path forward that, you know, ensures that we're meeting our greenhouse gas emissions and that we don't put our regional transportation dollars in jeopardy. So those discussions are ongoing. You know, it is we're hoping that we will have an update for the entire group at the June 16th board meeting. I'm hoping that we'll be able to come and bring you good news at that point and to see where we're at. But I just wanted to let everybody know that those discussions are ongoing, and wanted to, you know, open it up. If anyone had any questions, and James, feel free to jump in here and add anything that I didn't mention. And James, I should say as well, and James has been part of all these conversations too. So
Yeah, I'm happy to answer questions. As the Chair Saragosa said it really well. Hoping to try to figure out a path forward that both allows Sacramento County to get some long-term funding, but also allows us to meet our regional goals on greenhouse gas targets and not risk our ability to achieve state funding. That's our goal. So hopefully, as the chairman said, we'll have better, more substantive news for you the June board meeting.
All right, so moving on to item 7, reports. Robert?
Yeah, this is a chance for committee members to report out from anything happening in their jurisdiction. It's kind of an open forum for you guys to let us know what's happening in your neck of the woods.
Any directors?
I have some brief to report. Tuesday evening, we had a like a meeting on forming a Delta region geological hazard abatement organization. So that it's like in the early stages.
I have a question as we're talking about ag. So when's the Peach Festival?
When is
When's
it?
the Peach Festival? Shouldn't that be coming up soon?
It,
And
it should be coming up soon, and I should have the date. But I don't.
all right, you need to let us know.
So I will.
'cause Isn't
you
it
know,
like in June, July timeframe?
I will find out the date. and I'll let
Okay,
you know.
I'm, talking about, ag, and I'm thinking, ooh, it's almost peach season.
Right,
So,
it's coming around the corner.
okay, appreciate that.
That's a good one. I feel a field trip in our future, so definitely bring us the dates back on that. One thing for us.
You give me a couple seconds, I can find it for you real quick. I just saved it to my calendar.
Perfect.
1 second.
Well, while you're doing that, June 11th in Placerville, the wagon train will be coming through. It's the annual wagon train event. And so coming down Main Street, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then immediately after that, there's a couple of different events right out in town, but just in different locations where there's going to be some festivities afterwards, music, food, games, and then some history about who was a part of those original wagon trains, and some of the something new this year also about some of the communities of color that have always been part of the Gold Rush region, and some of their their contributions during this time as well. So it should be really fun events throughout the day, and welcome anyone to come up and see it. I think I may be in a wagon going down Main Street. We'll see here, but I'll be there nonetheless, at least as a watching it come through.
All right, anybody else? Director Harris, did you find that date?
Yep, let's see, July 15th and 16th.
All right.
In Marysville.
Thank you. Anyone else with the report?
Chair Baines, I just want to say thank you to all the directors that were involved in the release of the regional trails plan. We had great events around the region streamed on Facebook Live. We got a great article in the Sacramento Bee. I personally heard a lot of people, on social media or forward me the story who I know outside work just saying, is this real? This is great. Can we build this trail network? So just want to say again, ton of work by our staff to make all that happen, but very exciting. And now the next phase, well, we're going to have one last piece of this for you, which will come in August, which is looking at those regional priorities. And we discussed that a little bit, sort of where are the segments that are going to be the most important kind of regionally to meet our goals. And then after that, it really is about implementation. How do we actually begin helping all of the jurisdictions with the special districts, right? Stand these things up, win grant funding, build these kind of key segments and pieces. So great effort, lots of enthusiasm and excitement, lots of people getting very, again, kudos to all of you that have been leading the charge on this. So looking forward to what's next after that. So thanks.
Thank you. Just one announcement, that our next committee meeting will be held on Thursday, August 4th, 1:30. Same place, same time.
Yeah, we don't meet in July, as a reminder. So you are June 16th, and then you're free for 6 weeks.
All right, and then we have here our last item number 8, to receive and file the land use implementation activities for May 2022. So please.
Just receive and file, but I'll just take a quick chance. You heard from Placer County on the pro housing designation. It's in your staff report, but just a really important note, you get additional points for your SB1 programs, your transportation programs. It's not just housing, and those program cycles are coming up. So as you're wrapping up housing elements, definitely reach out to us, to Greg. We're happy to help, but we're the first out the gate through the RENA cycle. We're the first out the gate with our housing elements. We have a chance to, as Ann was talking about, really double down on getting bonus points and applications, not just for housing, for transportation as well. So just another plug for that.
Perfect. Thank you so much. If there's nothing else, meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.